Shabbat Shalom. Do you want to switch sides? Would that be better for you? No? Or good? Okay. Are you on? That is guitar, right? Yeah.
Bum biddy bum bum biddy bum bum biddy bum bum biddy 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 bum namana 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 or zarua la tzadi uyishrei lev simcha zarua la tzadi uyishrei lev simcha bum biddy bum 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 bum biddy namana 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 We're going to turn to page 142 as we welcome in the Sabbath angels with Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi-melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Boachem, Boachem Leshalom, Malachei Ashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi-melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruchuni leshalom, Malachei Ashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi-melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Tzeitzchem, Tzeitzchem leshalom, Malachei Ashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi-melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
I know that many of us come to synagogue tonight for all sorts of reasons. And I know many have come to support Sandra as she remembers her mom. And we are privileged to be able to be with you as we do that later this evening. And I want to thank you for bringing back to shul a lot of people that I haven't seen since the high holidays. And I'm not even going to say what year high holidays that was. So But whatever your reason is for being here tonight, we are so glad that you are with us and that we can be with you. With all that is going on in the world, and I don't need to enumerate whatever you think that means, because you can pick your headliner, as we say in our tradition, choose your tsuris. It is always comforting to be with others, if not to share our angst and our anxiety, at least to feel that we're not alone at the moments when we feel perhaps so distant from normalcy or what we thought was normalcy. So part of Shabbat is just gathering together. Part of Shabbat is just being with others. And part of Shabbat is actually being separated from. To make a distinction, a separation from the busyness and the headlines and the craziness that is out there, and to let this space truly be a sanctuary. And so I hope that you feel that sense of security and that sense of sanctuary here tonight. And I'm sure the cantor will talk more about the ensemble this evening and what they are bringing to us for our prayer. But I hope that, that the music elevates and uplifts your soul as we join together in prayer. And we're going to start with the lighting of the Shabbos candles, page 121. And we'd like to ask our ensemble they can sing and light candles. They're multi-talented.
All the way to the other side.
Just don't step on a microphone cord.
No tripping. We're blessed to have our ensemble here tonight, Louis Polson, Aaron Aberle-Palm, and Shira Daltrop. And we're going to light the candles.
The blessing's on page 121.
Yep, so go for it. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik neh shel Shabbat. So we chose to have this night in particular be a special musical Shabbat for several reasons. One of which is this is the Shabbat before we welcome in the new month of Nisan, which we will talk more about tomorrow morning. It's called Mevarchim Chodesh Nisan, and because it's Nisan, it has a special name, which is Shabbat HaChodesh. The Chodesh is month. So Shabbat of the month, Nisan, which in our tradition actually is the first month of the year, Nisan, when we celebrate Passover. So hopefully we'll bring in this Passover season with uplifting spiritual energy of this music throughout our service. And we're going to start with Kabbalat Shabbat, Psalm 96 on page 131. Shiru Ladonai, sing to God a new song. Shiru Ladonai, shir chadash, shiru Ladonai kol haaretz, shiru Ladonai, baruchu shemo, asru miyom leyom, yeshuato, sabru lagoyim kevodo bechol ha'amim, Mizmor Shiru, Mizmor Shiru Adonai, Shir Chadash, Ki Miflaot Asa, Hoshia Lo Yamino Zroa Kodshadia, Adonai Yeshuato, Le'nei Agoyim Gilat Tzidkato, Zachar Chasto Be'emunato, Le'beit Yisrael Ra'u Kol Ha'aretz, Et Yeshuat Eloheinu, Hariu Adonai Kol Ha'aretz, Yitzchu Be'ranenu Ve'zameru, Yalai, lai, 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 Yalai, lai, 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 Yalai, lai, Yalai, lai, 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 Yalai, lai, Yalai, lai, 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 Yalai, Yalai, lai, 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 Yalai, lai, Yalai, lai, 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 Yalai, lai, 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 Yalai, lai, Yalai, lai, 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 lai. On the top of 134, Zamru Ladonai, we sing together. Zameru Ladonai bechinor, bechinor vekol zimra. Zameru Ladonai bechinor, bechinor vekol zimra. Zameru, zamru, Ladonai. Zameru, zamru, Ladonai. Zameru Ladonai bechinor, bechinor vekol zimra. Zameru Ladonai bechinor, bechinor vekol zimra. So before we turn to Lecha Dodi, in our Kabbalat Shabbat service, we think of this theme of light, lighting the Shabbat candles, or Zarua, light is sown for the righteous, the words that we began our service with tonight. And these can all be seen as recalling the first Shabbat described in our creation story in Genesis. God said, God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it. So there's a midrash imagining how did God bless or sanctify Shabbat. There's an idea that the first Shabbat was a day of continuous light for 36 hours. And it wasn't just any light, it was a divine, sacred light that we don't necessarily have anymore, called Or Haganuz, a hidden light that's been hidden ever since that first Shabbat. And we find all these different ways to create our own sacred light now, recalling that primordial Or Ganuz, light of creation. So as we turn to Lecha Dodi, where we say, let us go out to greet Shabbat, the sacred wellspring of blessing, we can think of bringing that inner divine light to our Shabbat through our voices. Page 138. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Shamor וזכור מחשבה תחילה, הולך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה, הולך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. Verse 3, מקדש מלך עיר מלוכה, קומי צאי מתוך הפכה, רב לך שבט בעמק הרווחה, והוא יחמול עלייך חמלה, הולך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה, הולך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. Verse 5, התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי, 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 שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה, הולך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה, הולך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה. Last verse. בואי בשלום, עצרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצולה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה, הולך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה, הולך דודי לקראת כלה, בני שבת נקבלה.
You can be seated. We're supposed to rise at that moment and turn towards the door to greet the Sabbath bride or the Gladstones who walked in at that very moment.
Welcome.
You know, I was thinking, what could I possibly add to the musical Shabbat, the ensemble Shabbat, and other than not singing, which is why I sat down. I was thinking, though, you know, where do we sing out? I mean, how often in our week, many of us, other than those that are standing here, where do we sing? We sing in our shower, maybe. We sing in our car, and in those two places, if somebody hears us, we stop, or if somebody sees us, we're embarrassed. And we sing in synagogue. And when we sing in synagogue, we sing out, right? This is where we feel maybe comfortable enough to give voice to the melody of our prayers. So sing out tonight as we enter into the tefillah part of our service after Sadiq Katamar. I know, I saw it there. Let the prayers evoke a melody inside your soul, inside your heart, and give voice to it. Sing out unto God. But we're going to continue page 142, Sadiq Katamar. 142.
It's on the bottom of page 140.
140, excuse me.
It's okay.
Sadiq Katamar yifrach, keretz bavanon, bavanon yizke, shetzuri, shevet Adonai, bechaz rosh.
Page 263 will rise, Chatzi Kaddish.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון, וחיי לכל בית ישראל, בגלה בגלה, ובזמן קריב ואמרו, אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם עולם מעלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה, שמי לקודשם בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תלוש וחתה ונחמתה, דמירן מעלמה ואמרו אמן. ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
Please be seated. Together on 265, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidbaro ma'ariv aravim, b'chokhmah poteach she'arim, ובתבונה משנה עתים, ומחליף את הזמנים, ומסדר את הכוכבים במשמרותיהם ברקיע כרצונו, בורא יום ולילה, גולל אור מפני חושך, וחושך מפני אור, ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו.
אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריב ערבים. אהבת עולם בית ישראל, עמך אתה, תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו, בשוכבנו ובקומנו, נשיח בחוקיך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך, ובמצוותיך, לעולם לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו, ובהם נגד יומם ולילה, ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. שמו ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בהם, בשבתך בביתך ולכתך בדרך, ושוכבך ובקומך, ושרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם. Amen. Service continues with Mi Chamocha, page 270. Mi Chamocha, Ba'elim Adonai, Mi Chamocha, Nenad B'Kodesh, Nora, Tehilot, Oseh, Veleh, Nora, Tehilot, Oseh, Veleh, Malchutecha, Ra'umanecha, Bokayam Lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, Zehi, Anu ve'ameru, Adonai, Imloch, Le'olam, Va'ed, Adonai, Imloch, Le'olam, Va'ed. Ne'emar ki v'ad Adonai et Yaakov, u'galo miyad chazak mimenu, Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. Continuing on page 271 with Hashkivenu. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom, leshalom. Vehamidenu shomreinu lehayim. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. Amen. Shelter us beneath your wings. Shelter us beneath your wings, O Adonai. Guard us from all harmful things, O Adonai. Keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake to morning's light. Teach us, God, wrong from right. Amen. 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 Hashkivenu. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom, leshalom. Vehamidenu shomreinu lehayim. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. Amen. On page 272, we have two prayers here that remind us of the sanctity of Shabbat. It's really been a long Temple Sholom tradition to always do Vishamru on Friday nights. But there's Yismechu right below it, which is a beautiful, beautiful piece of liturgy as well. And it really talks about the joy of Shabbat. It says, Kore Shabbat Oneg. We have our Oneg Shabbat. We're going to have a delicious Oneg Shabbat later tonight. But it doesn't mean cookies, Oneg. It actually means joy. And There's a lot about it. So there's something about just being in this time of gladness, of finding this day and just the pure happiness that we can find within it. And of course, singing raises our joy and happiness too. So we're going to join with Cantor Cohen and our ensemble at the bottom of the page 272, Yismechu. ישמחו
ובמלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת
וקורא עונג
שבת מקדשי שבי שבת כולם ישמעו ויתענגו מטבח שבת ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת
ובשביל רצית בו וקידשתו שבת
חמדת ימים אותו קראת שבת ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת זכר למעשה בראשית שבת זכר למעשה בראשית שבת ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת. We'll rise together now as we prepare for the Amidah, beginning on page 273.
Adonai
Satai
Tifta
Adonai Satai Tifta Uviagit Tehilatecha Uviagit Tehilatecha Adonai Satai Tifta Adonai Satai Tifta Uviagit Tehilatecha Uviagit Tehilatecha Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך חוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מקיים מתים אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיה מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לישני עפר. מיכה
אתה לחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יעללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
You are holy, your name is holy, and those who are holy praise you every day. Blessed are you, Adonai, the holy God. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh.
Amen.
May be seated. As we turn to the next part of our service on page 279, we'll join together in Ritzeh.
Ritzeh Adonai Eloheinu be'amecha Yisrael u'tefilatam be'ava tekabel u'tehilei ratzon tamid avodat Yisrael Israel Amecha El Karov Lechol Korav Penei El Avadecha Lechoneinu Shefach Ruchacha Aleinu V'techezena Eineinu בשובך לציון ברחמים ברוך אתה אדוני המחזיר שכינתו לציון
Amen. In the middle of page 281, we have these beautiful words of gratitude for the blessings of each day. Va'al kulam yitbarach v'yitromam shimcha.
ועל כולם, ועל כולם, יתברך ויתרומם, יתברך ויתרומם, שמך מלכנו תמיד לעולם ועד. ועל כולם, ועל כולם, יתברך ויתרומם, יתברך ויתרומם, שמך מלכנו תמיד לעולם ועד. וכל החיים יודוך סלע, והללו בשמחה באמת, האל ישועתנו ועזרתנו, עזרתנו סלע. ועל כולם, ועל כולם, יתברך ויתרומם, יתברך ויתרומם, שמך מלכנו תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, הטוב שמך, הטוב שמך, ולך נאה להודות.
prayer for peace, Shalom Rav, on page 282.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata melech Adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata melech Adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov beinecha levarech et amcha Yisrael bechol עת ובכל שעה משלומך. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam.
Take a few moments now in the sanctuary for silent prayer.
So as I mentioned, tonight is we start Shabbat HaChodesh, and in the lunar calendar, it's the darkest time of the month before we start the new moon of Nisan and begin to prepare for the Passover season. And I think this, as we prepare for Nisan, Oseh Shalom is a prayer that brings us hope. Even though we sing it all the time, every day, I think it's especially appropriate for this season when we notice the hope of new blooms on the trees, the hope that we have with the renewal of spring, and thinking ahead to Passover, retelling that story of redemption during this season. We'll continue with Oseh Shalom, page 285.
Oseh Shalom b'romav, uyaseh Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'yimeru amen. Oseh Shalom b'romav, uyaseh Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'yimeru amen.
So beautiful. Thank you. We're going to turn ahead in our siddur now to page 371. So we offer prayers of healing for those in our community, our families, those who have been struggling for some time with challenges of health, and those who suddenly we realize are more fragile than we had ever imagined. And so as we share the names of those people we are praying for, we'll also invite you, if there are other people that you were thinking of, to share them as well. Our community as one will pray that they might find refuah, healing of body and of spirit. In particular, we think of Sam Brown, Louise Adrian, Susan Mishler, Lynn Wolfson, Rabbi Lindsay Bat Joseph, Natalie Wormelli, Yum Kin Godin, Semach ben Menashe Halevi Varikla, Meir Tzvi, Meir Zalman ben Rachel, Daniel Gottesman, Bill Shaw, Claire Columbia, Matt Good, Alicia Eckersley, Carla Zivit, Janet Gelb, David Shlomo Gorney, and Andrea Jarizbiak. Again, if there are other names to mention, if you'd like to rise and share them at this time.
May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
Shabbat Shalom. First, again, a tremendous thank you to our ensemble, to Shira and Aaron and Louis. Thank you so much, and to Cantor Cohen for just a beautiful and uplifting musical Shabbat. And thank you to Shay and Marielle in the back for getting the sound and everything all balanced and right so we could hear. I want to just draw your attention to a number. Marielle's actually over there with her dad, which is where she should be. I want to draw your attention to a number of things that are happening at the synagogue, many of them which I hope that you will join us for. First of all, on Wednesday of this week, Ben Moraine, who is the new CEO and Executive Director of New Israel Fund of Canada, will join us via Zoom. He was in our community in person a few weeks ago, but didn't have a chance to talk with our congregation. And as we wrote in the letter that we sent to the congregation, along with the Israel Religious Action Center, the Reform Movement, and Arts of Canada, and the Israel Movement for Progressive Judaism, New Israel Fund of Canada has really been on very much the front lines in the battle to save democracy in Israel. And to hear about the work that they're doing to support those efforts in Israel, join us for a Q&A and a conversation with Ben via Zoom. That's Wednesday night at 7:30. On Thursday night at 7 o'clock is Torah-inspired leadership with past president of our congregation, Jeff Balin. They'll be looking at the weekly Torah portion by Yikra on the theme, The Sins of a leader. And then this coming weekend, we have a really wonderful weekend planned for our congregation. And I'm so glad that you're all here now so you can come back next week. Because there has not been as much uptake on this weekend as we thought that there would be, or we hoped that there would be, I should say. Joel Chasnoff, as I hope you're aware, is going to be joining us. Joel is an incredible Israeli educator, author, and comedian. He's been in Vancouver before, always to wonderful reviews and really celebrated appearances at the book festival, at the Chutzpah festival. He's going to be with us as a scholar in residence for the weekend, Friday night for services, Saturday morning, and then after for, there's a dinner Friday night as well. Saturday morning and after over lunch for some study all about Israel and Israeli culture, and very much also, of course, about what's going on and the underlying reasons for what's going on in Israel today. And then Saturday night, it has been Jewish custom and tradition all the way back to the shtetl to laugh in the face of despair and destruction. And so we're going to laugh a bit. We'll laugh about ourselves, we'll laugh about Israel, because if you're not laughing, sometimes you're crying. So join us on Saturday night, 7:30, and at 6 or 5:40, 6 o'clock, the single mingle? 6 to 7:15, we've got a single mingle going on. So if you are single or know somebody who is 40 or up, please join us for that. There'll be some refreshments before the performance and an opportunity to meet other singles. So please, if you would, come out this coming weekend for those activities at the synagogue. Lots more going on in our community. I want to mention, as I see David Schwartz here, the president of the Jewish Film Festival, I always love the Jewish Film Festival and always never get to go to as many of the shows as I want to, but I've been to one at least so far. It's been a fantastic festival.
Somebody said it was the best film and a big part of it was you interviewing.
Oh, thank you, David. That person was probably my mom, but anyhow. So it's been a wonderful festival, and there's still a few more days, right, David?
Yes, and we'll start again on the 19th, this Saturday and Saturday after Shabbat. Some morning, afternoon shows Friday.
Mm-hmm.
No, Friday. So there's something tomorrow, and then it shifts to the Rothstein.
Right, so it'll be at the JCC at the Rothstein.
1 year, one week, virtual films.
Right.
But it doesn't films you can watch from your comfort of your own home, your own coffee, your own slippers.
Just like people are watching services right now, I'm sure. So please, the Jewish Film Festival, and also our men's club has programming coming up as well. There's just so much going on in our congregation, our community. I hope that you will avail yourself of all of that. Rabbi Brown.
Yes, okay. So I've been waiting for the perfect Torah portion to tell you something completely and utterly nerdy about myself. And we found it this week. It's actually something that happened in my household a few weeks ago. It's a wacky Jewish science project that we did. And you know, when you get a rabbi and a Jewish studies professor together in the same house, you might not be surprised sometimes things get a little bit nerdy. But we went to really a whole new level with this experiment. And I know you're on the edge of your seat to hear what it was, but you have to wait. I have to give you a bit of background first. Okay, so this Shabbat, we have a double parasha, Vayakel Pekudei, and most of it is actually really focused on the details of artistry, of the items that were made to be used in worship. So things like the tabernacle, the altar, the vestments of the priests, we talked about that word the other day, and so on. But all of this is preceded by the very, very beginning of the parasha, a little brief mention of Shabbat, including one specific injunction, not to kindle a fire on Shabbat. Now, this rule, you might be familiar with it. It's really at the center of a lot of halakha, a lot of Jewish law that came from this one understanding of one of the prohibitions of labor on Shabbat, not to kindle a fire. For example, there is a tradition that exists to this day of not actually completing a circuit within something electrical. We have an electrician here. Where did Ben go? He went. Okay, he left. So that's why, for example, some Jews don't turn on or off a switch on Shabbat, because completing a circuit is considered kindling a fire. But it's not just about modern relevance, this whole thing about kindling a fire. There's actually a lot of discussion and, of course, disagreement, because it's Judaism, among rabbis and early Jews about how fire could be used on Shabbat. So, for example, Shabbat candles. How can we use a fire on Shabbat if we're not to kindle a fire on Shabbat? And we think about this, lighting Shabbat candles. It's such a central part of being Jewish, of observing Shabbat. But really, lighting Shabbat candles was an example of leniency, of elasticity of the rabbis, of bringing something that was maybe a little bit on the fence into the practice of Judaism, so that it could be enjoyed in the home on Friday nights. And in fact, this whole discussion about how do we use light on Shabbat, how do we use fire on Shabbat, splintered part of the Jewish community away. So you've maybe heard of, there's a group of that was part of the ancient Jewish people, the Karaites, that actually disagreed with the rabbis. They said, these new rabbinic rules that you're making, they're not from the Torah, so we're not going to do them. And they said, we're not going to not only light a flame before Shabbat, we don't want to have any sort of flame going during Shabbat. And so they would actually sit in the dark on Friday nights. But it is the rabbis who are our kind of Jewish people's predecessors, from whom we have inherited really this incredible corpus of Jewish practice, who innovated and found new ways to interpret the mitzvot with great flexibility and creativity. And not only by lighting Shabbat lamps before Shabbat begins to be able to enjoy Shabbat dinner in light and not sitting in the dark, but with even more creativity, which is where finally my family science experiment is coming in. So in the Mishnah, this kind of oldest part of our rabbinic law, there's a whole chapter devoted to lamps, to lighting lamps. These, of course, were the main illumination technology of the time, and Greg, my husband, Lewis knows he really likes oil lamps. So the rabbis, they talk a lot about these lamps. And I brought show and tell, because we actually have a lot of replica oil lamps in our house. So you can see what I'm talking about. And as an aside, actually, we have a couple of them in our museum display case in the lobby. So if you want to see it, and Greg says they're very good ones, so you should look at them. But back to the Mishnah. The rabbis had a lot to say about all the details pertaining to these lamps. What kind of oil are you allowed to burn? What materials were suitable for wicks? And particularly, how can they be used on Shabbat? And they had one extraordinary ancient hack for how to use an oil lamp on Shabbat. We learn in one Mishnah that some people would take an empty eggshell and prick a tiny hole in the bottom of the shell, and then they would fill it with oil and set the egg on top of the lamp, and the oil would drip very slowly so that it would be an extra reservoir to keep the lamp burning longer on Shabbat without actually yourself being the one to refuel it. Some of the rabbis thought this was not kosher, but Rabbi Yehuda permitted it, and probably it was very much a thing that people did because the rabbis were commenting on it. So our family experiment was side-by-side oil lamp races, one with an egg and one without. Okay, so the experiment was a little bit of a flop. It was great. I mean, we had a lot of fun. But one of the lamps, the one with the egg, had a tiny leak. So a lot of the oil was coming out. The egg one lasted a bit longer, but not as long as it really should have. So we have plans to do it again someday soon. But what does all of this mean to us today? In some ways, as Reformed Jews, we can just say, it doesn't matter. We're not a halachic movement. We don't think about eggshells dripping into oil lamps, or by modern comparison, setting up timers on lamps or hot plates to slowly cook cholent on Shabbat. But I think that boundaries and rituals are such a significant part of the Jewish experience in all streams of Judaism. For us, as Reformed Jews, they are not chumrot or stringencies to build a fence around the law, but rather guideposts that help us develop sacred boundaries that give our lives meaning. One of the most precious gifts that Judaism gives us, among many, is Shabbat. I don't care or judge if someone drives to shul, pushes an elevator button, or extends the light of their lamp with an eggshell filled with olive oil. But what I do care very much about is that you carve out time that is sacred, that fills your life with meaning, that sanctifies time in ways that are intentional. We all have these rituals that give us the precious opportunity to sanctify our lives. Let's use them for that purpose. And if you want to know the results of the second grade egg experiment, ask me in a couple weeks. The eggshells are drying on our windowsill, ready to go. Shabbat Shalom. We'll rise now for Aleinu, page 586.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי ארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורר עלינו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינת זו בגובה מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים, בשמיים ממעל, והארץ מתחת, אין עוד. The middle of page 590. כי המלכות שלך היא, ויום מעט תמלוך בכבוד, ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
Please be seated. Got my book. Let me down. It does make me wonder if the miracle of Hanukkah involved eggshells. I'm just wondering. It's a whole new idea, concept. This past summer, we began a new, well, you never know if you start something if it's going to continue and become a minhag, a custom, or a tradition. But there was a period of about a week, maybe 10 days, where we had 5 deaths and funerals in our congregation, one right after each other. And over that period of time in our sanctuary, there were a lot of people in mourning and in grieving. It's not uncommon for us, but to have so many at one time, you could feel it in the room. And there was a sense in that moment that we needed to provide an opportunity for those that were in mourning to share with us about their loved one. Our tradition teaches that during those days immediately after a death, the neshama, the soul of our loved ones, it goes up to heaven. And that what guides the soul on that journey, what lets God know who God is getting, are our prayers and stories about them. That when we call out and when we share and when we draw lessons from their life, when we sing their praises, their soul not only journeys up to heaven, but as I know I've shared with you before, it becomes part of us. And so we began this custom that at the end of Shloshim, at the end of 30 days of mourning, we would invite loved ones who were comfortable doing it, and not everybody is able to at that time, to share a memory, to share a story, to draw a lesson from the life of the deceased. I know that it has been comforting for those that have done it, but I can tell you even more so, it has been so illuminating, so powerful, so enriching, and such a gift and a blessing to our congregation to learn about the person that you love so dearly, and the story that you share with us about them becomes part of our own understanding of the world. It may tell God who God is getting, but it also tells us who was so important to you. So with that as some background, because I know for some this is a new custom in our congregation, it's a privilege to invite Sandra to come up and share a reflection about her mom.
Thank you, Rabbi. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. And it's my privilege tonight to be given this opportunity to share with you a few memories about my mother, Rhoda June Brody, who passed away on February 12th in Saskatoon at the age of 89, almost 90. My mother was born on June 1st, 1933 in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, the youngest of 4 siblings, Petty Landa, Herschel Davener, and Shirley Davener. As a result of being born on June 1st, she was given the middle name June. My mom's father, Sam Davener, lost his first wife, Rose Saunders, in the pandemic of the last century, the Spanish flu of 1918. He was left with a young baby, Petty Landa, who, as a single father back in 1918, couldn't take care of her. They didn't have J-date back then, so through the Jewish telegraph grapevine, word was put out that my Zeta was looking for a wife, and a Jewish wife was found for him from Grand Forks, North Dakota, Esther Rosenzweig. My mom was Esther's youngest child. My mother grew up in Prince Albert during the Depression. She went to primary, secondary school, and nursing school there as well at the Holy Family Hospital. My mother was a very social person and made lifelong friends. She became good friends in high school with a woman by the name of Helen Wilson, and remained friends with Helen right until she passed away. A little bit of golf trivia for any golf fans. My mom's good friend Helen Wilson is Adam Hadwin's grandmother. And Adam Hadwin, for those who aren't golf fans, is one of the successful Canadian golfers on the PGA Tour. Though unfortunately today he didn't do so well, and he didn't make the cut and isn't playing this weekend, but he is one of the people that I follow. My mother had another very good friend from nursing school, Lois LaRue, who moved to Vancouver Island, and Mom remained lifelong friends with her and visited her in July 2019. Next, I want to tell a story of how my parents met. They married in 1956, and there was a young man by the name of Harvey Field who was about to have his bar mitzvah in Melfort, Saskatchewan. which is a town then of about 5,000 people. It was then the largest town in Saskatchewan that once became a city. It was neither the largest town or the smallest city. It had a Jewish population of about, I think, 40 to 50 families at the highest, taking into consideration all the towns surrounding Nipawin, Tisdale, Star City, and Canistino, where Harvey was from. And he was to have his bar mitzvah, and my father had recently lost his father, so wasn't planning on going to Harvey's bar mitzvah. However, he heard that there was going to be this young Jewish single woman from Prince Albert coming to the bar mitzvah. And my grandparents, Prince Albert, the Daveners, had decided to send my mother to represent the family. She was traveling from Prince Albert to Melfort on the bus. My father learned what bus she was on, what time the bus was going to arrive, so he went down to the bus depot to check her out, just to take a look. This is a true story. Apparently, he liked what he saw. He went back home, and he decided, after all, he would attend Harvey's bar mitzvah. And they got married in 1956, and were married for almost 63 years. So on a side note, flash forward some 44 years after my parents met at Harvey's bar mitzvah, and Harvey and his partner, Rhonda Bloom, who are here this evening, and Rhonda's my cousin, they introduced Tobin and me in 1998. And then we got married in 2001, and we're still married here tonight. So my mother lived in Melfort until 2017, when my parents moved to Saskatoon to an assisted living residence. My mother was very happy to move to Saskatoon and live in this new community, and in a center where there was a larger Jewish community. She didn't have to make meals anymore. She was able to see her good friend Helen Wilson, Adam Hadwin's grandmother, more often. And until COVID, she was very involved in life in the community, at the assisted living, playing bridge, getting involved in the day trips, activities, and having coffee with her friends. And so she was quite happy there. And as I mentioned earlier, a very social person. So we're backtracking and going back to her time in Melfort. She enjoyed bowling, curling, golf, playing bridge, coffee with her friends. As a teenager, I was often called upon to curl with my mother's team when they needed a substitute, or bowl with her team when they needed someone. And I have fond memories of playing bridge with my mother and my Auntie Petty and my Zeta Davener and Prince Albert when we'd go to visit. My mother loved having friends over for coffee, for dinner. She was, I think, a pretty good cook, but a really good baker, and she made the most delicious cinnamon buns. The aroma in the kitchen and the living room was wonderful, and I couldn't wait till they came out of the oven to have one or two, sometimes even 3 or 4. They were just quite amazing. And my mother, another wonderful quality she had was that she was adventurous. She loved to try new things. I lived in Japan from 1990 to 1995, and my parents came to visit. My mother was very open and interested in trying all these new Japanese foods, sushi, sukiyaki, going to the Japanese hot springs, sleeping on a futon and a tatami mat, going to new interesting places. My father, not so keen. So we had to take him to Kentucky Fried Chicken, McDonald's, actually in Japanese they said Makudonaldo, and California Pizza Kitchen, and other places where he could get foods he was familiar with. Another lovely quality that my mother had was a great sense of humor. She loved to tell jokes. Often her jokes were somewhat colorful and on the edge. My brother-in-law shared with me a story. The week before my mother passed away, the rabbi in Saskatoon came to visit on the Monday, and the first thing my mother said to him was, "Rabbi, Rabbi, where have you been? Why haven't you come to see me? Why has it taken you so long?" And then she asked him to pray for her. And he came back again on the Wednesday and Friday and did say prayers, so it was really appreciated. And in addition to my mother making friends in all parts of her life, she had her bridge friends, her bowling friends, her coffee friends, friends from the many winters they spent in Palm Springs. My mom was also very interested in our friends. So she used to inquire about my doctor friend Selena and asked how she was doing. Selena met my parents at the airport one year, took them for lunch, and drove them to Harbor Air so they could fly to Nanaimo to visit us. She would ask about our friends Andy and Elaine, whom she met in Palm Springs and again in Melfort. She asked about Dick and Suzanne, our good friends, and Gabriola, who hosted us for lunch. And she used to always ask about Tobin. As many of you know, he has some health issues, and she would ask how he was doing. I would try to FaceTime with my mom almost every day and visit her in Saskatoon as often as I could. And I'm just going to go to a last sort of best memory. Was the week in July 2019 when my mom came and spent a week with Tobin and me in Vancouver Island. My father passed away in May 2019, and after the funeral, I asked my mother, I said, would you like to come to Vancouver and visit? And I was quite surprised and pleased when she said yes, but she said, you know what? I like spending time with you in Nanaimo more than Vancouver. So that's what we did. We arranged for her to come to Nanaimo to visit, and we spent a lovely week. We took her to Qualicum Beach to visit her good friend from nursing school. We went to Gabriola Island and had a lovely lunch there with our friends Dick and Suzanne. We met other friends at Maple Bay for lunch. We drove to Courtney one night and had a delicious dinner at the restaurant where our dear friends Una and Errol Durbach's son had a restaurant, and met Una and Errol there that evening and their daughter and her family. And we had a lovely Shabbat dinner in Nanaimo with Birgit Westergaard and Norman Gladstone. Unfortunately, the weather wasn't great, so we had to have dinner inside, but it was very nice, and my mom really enjoyed it. And, it was difficult for her to get around with her walker then, but she had a great sense of adventure and was game and happy to go everywhere we suggested, so it was lovely. So she lived a fairly good life until May of 22 when she fell and went into the hospital and never gained strength again to go back to the assisted living. But she made the best of it and made new friends in the nursing home. So I say she lived a full life, almost made it to 90. I have a lot of good memories of my mom, and I thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to share with you tonight those memories. And I want to thank all of our friends and relatives who came this evening to support me, and to thank everyone in the last month who've given us messages of condolences, phone, email, messages in the mail. It's been very lovely. And I want to thank everyone who wasn't able to come tonight, who's been watching online. And thank you both to Rabbi Brown and Rabbi Dan for reaching out to me and giving me this opportunity. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. I think the story of how your parents met is maybe the best commercial for our single mingle next Saturday night. So. We turn in our prayer books to page 598 as our thoughts turn to loved ones who are not here with us, but whose memory very much is. And on this Shabbat, we recall those who died during this past week or these past 30 days, whose families are in the midst of Shiva and Shloshim for blessing. As I read the name of your loved one, if you could rise and remain standing here or at home so that we might join you in remembering them for blessing. Rhoda Brody, Jay Denbo, Joan Fader, Ann Hirsch, Robert James Jones, Sherry Klein, Eric Schneider. And those for whom the Yortzeit, the anniversary of the death of your loved one, is on this Shabbat, if you too could rise and remain standing as well. Sarah Atnikov, Jack Barnett, John Berry, Jack Boeco, Aaron David Tchaikovsky, Joan Chapnick, Matt Chechik, Gertrude Churtko, Joseph Coblin, Elaine Nadler Costello, Margaret Davis, Ann Erkey, Louise Feldman, Michael Felstein, Harriet Finkel, Lila Flum, Bernard Geffen, Robert Ginsberg, Michael Givatamacher, Harry Goldberg, Charles Gordon, Esther Gould, Mel Hain, Jerry Halpern, Gertrude Hoffman, Gerda Jackson, Bernard Kaplan, Sam Kaplan, Lillian Cates, Ruth Kleiman, Louis Cohn, Shirley Court, Molly Crivel, Marjorie Levinson, Theodore Levitt, Cyril Lukes, Carrie McKinnon, Henry Michaelberg, Meyer Miller, George Minnock, Irving Ornstein, Milton Ozer, Francis Pearl, David Perlis, Ann Rayson, Arthur Rosenfeld, June Seelig, Ali Shanti, Simcha Shidlovsky, George Silverman, Diane Sinclair, Max Singer, Tova Snyder, Robert Steiner, Elka Tabakman, Edith Tapley, Sam Tenenbaum, Louis Zacher. If there are others whose names I've missed or mispronounced, or if you've come to say Kaddish for any reason, you could rise and share their names as well. We look around the congregation, we see those who have stood in mourning. We don't want them to stand alone, so we'll stand now by their side, providing the comfort of our presence as we join together the Mourner's Kaddish, page 598, Kaddish Yatom. Yit Gadal, V'yit Gadash, Shemei Rabbah, V'yomad Yivrach, Yerutei, V'yamlich Malchutei, B'chayechon, V'yomechon, U'payed, Chol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agalav V'zman Kariv, V'ymaru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah, Mevarach, Le'olam, U'lalmei Olmaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitroman v'yitnaseh v'yit adar v'yit aleh v'yit alal shemei dekudesha brechu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiron be'alma v'yimaru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimaru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'kol yoshvei tevel. Amen.
Amen.
May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort the bereaved among us, and we say together, Amen.
Amen.
If you remain standing for a moment, we'll do Kiddush and Motzi, and then we invite you to join us in our social hall for our Oneg Shabbat. And we thank Tobin and Sandra for sponsoring that this evening. You go ahead.
Okay.
You go ahead.
Is it this one? No. Okay, I'll just use that one. Okay. ויהי ערב ויהי בוקר יום השישי, ויחולו השמיים והארץ וכל צבאם, ויחל אלוהים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה, וישפוט ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה. ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי, ויקדש אותו, כי בו שבת מכל מלאכתו אשר ברא אלוהים לעשות. צברי.
לחיים.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא פרי הגפן.
אמן.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו ורצה בנו, בשבת קודשו באהבה וברצון הנחילנו, זיכרון למעשה בראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי באנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
אמן. לחיים.
לחיים.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם המוציא לחם מן הארץ. אמן.
We'll end end with Adon Olam, page 625. Adon Olam,
Adon Olam,
Asher Malach,
Asher Malach,
B'terem Kol,
B'terem Kol,
Yetzir Nivra, Leit Nasa, V'chepsocho, Azai Melech Shemo Nikra
Adon Olam,
Ve'acharei
Kiflot HaKol,
Levado Imloch Torah Adon
Olam, Vehu Haya, Vehu Hoveh, Vehu Yeh B'tifara, Adon Olam,
Adon Olam,
Adon Olam,
Asher Malach,
Asher Malach,
B'terem Kol,
B'terem Kol,
Yetzir Nivra,
Leit Nasa,
Beit Nasal,
V'chepsocho,
Azai Melech Shemo Nikra,
Adon Olam. Services tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Torah study at 8:30. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Asher Koach.